I would say don't be afraid to go forward, and to apply yourself. I cannot tell you the number of times a person would come up to me and they'd look at me and they go, "Oh man, I wanted to be a pilot so bad." I have heard that 100 times if I've heard it once. Mm-hmm. And I just say to myself silently, well, why don't you go do something about it? You can't do something unless you try, and you got to show up to do it. That's the name of the game.
Welcome to Six Figure Trucker, the podcast where we share advice on how to be successful in trucking and have fun while doing so. We'll share stories, news, and advice on how to earn six figures in trucking, and we'll speak to guys and gals that are already doing so. Let's get to the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Six Figure Trucker, brought to you by Norton Transport. And you guys know, if you've joined us each and every time, we lift up and elevate the drivers that work for Norton Transport and move the trucks that ultimately move the goods that really drive the economy of America and Canada, for that matter. We're very grateful to them. And joining us now is a guest from last week. He's a very fascinating man, very fascinating driver, and we're lucky to have him on our roster. That is Robert Nebel. We shared some of his story with you guys last week. We're going to dig a little deeper into a different part of his story. Robert joins us now. Robert, how are you?
I'm doing just fine. Thank you for asking.
Absolutely. Now, we're joining Robert. It's in the evening. We had talked a little bit before we got on the air that you enjoy a nice tequila. Are you having one this evening? Is that in the future?
Well, as a matter of fact, I'm drinking a diet ginger ale with zero sugar as we speak.
Okay. Is there any tequila in that, or just a diet ginger?
It's just a refrigerated can of diet ginger ale.
Okay. Now, you did say that you have a specific go-to in the tequila. Tell us what you like and what attracts you to tequila.
Well, a good friend of mine a while ago, back in the early 2000s, liked tequila, like margaritas. And she said, well, let's get this Patron. I said, what's that? She says, it's like a gourmet tequila. And at the time, I could afford that. So we got that, and I've been hooked on Patron tequila ever since. And it's been a while since I've had one, but I just like making it with frozen limeade from the store, crushed ice, and just hit it in the blender and enjoy that.
Gotcha. Now, we were talking about Robert Nebel. If you heard him last week, he told us some great stories. Born in New York City, moved to Pennsylvania when he was 6 years old, and from there he had a great childhood. Idyllic was what Robert shared with us about his childhood. And we did not touch on some of the things that Robert has done, but I'm going to let Robert take off with it, pun intended there. Robert, you've led a fascinating life on the ground and in the air.
Yes, sir.
Tell us what happened and how you became the pilot that you were and have been.
Well, I graduated from high school in 1965, and I went to college, and I dropped out of college, and I had a student deferment for the draft at the time, and that went away, and I was going to get drafted. I mean, there was no two ways about it. And I went, well, if I'm going to get drafted, I want to do what I want to do. And I kind of knew I wanted to be a pilot, but I didn't really know how to go about it. I wanted to be a pilot when I was in high school, even in grade school, but I had no earthly idea how to get from point A to point B in that regard. So I went to the recruiter in Stroudsburg and told him I wanted to be a pilot. And he looked at me and says, have a seat, son, and we'll talk. And next thing you know, he's got me hooked up, for the academic test to see if I'm academically qualified. And I passed those tests with flying colors, thank goodness. And
not surprising.
Well, thank you. I took the physical down at Fort Dix, New Jersey, had my very first EKG with those suction cups on your skin. I don't know if you remember those.
Oh, yeah.
But past that, and next thing you know, I'm off to flight school in the U.S. Army after going through basic training at Fort Polk, Louisiana.
I'm assuming that was pretty hot.
It was so hot there, cows were giving evaporated milk.
Oh, my.
Yeah, so, we went to Fort Walters, Texas, which is just west of Fort Worth, Texas, for basic flight training, and did pretty good there. And after that, we went to Hunter Army Airfield in Savannah, Georgia, for instrument training and getting checked out in the Huey, which everybody's heard of the Huey. And
so you
flew
were,
those there.
You were off Abercorn Parkway there in Savannah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly right.
Did you play golf there at the Hunter Army Airfield? I don't even know if the golf
course
was...
No, I did not. Even though I was on the golf team in high school, I was too busy, studying and applying myself so I could graduate, and survive in Vietnam. Because, knowledge in flying is tantamount to, being a good pilot. And if you're not studying, if you're not paying attention, you're not a good pilot. And in Vietnam, we lost a lot of my classmates, by doing stupid stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
now, you were in Vietnam October, is that right, 68?
Yes, October 68 to October 69, correct.
Take us back there. I mean, if you're willing. I mean, some people are okay talking about it. Some would rather not. But take us back there, what it was like. Well,
I remember getting off the plane in Cam Ranh Bay, and the first thing to hit you is, number one, the heat and the humidity, and number two is the aroma. Holy cow, it was overpowering. But you acclimate to that, after a period of time, and stayed there for a day or two while they figured out what they're going to do with us. Flew on the C-130 up to Chu Lai up in I Corps, and went to my unit there, and flew with the 196th Light Infantry Brigade Aviation Detachment, where I flew OH-6s for liaison work, carrying our infantry officers around so they could coordinate what they were doing out in the field. And that really got boring to me. And I asked for a transfer to a combat unit, which I did. And I was blessed to get assigned to the 176th Assault Helicopter Company in May of 1969. And that's where I really got in the thick of things of what's going on in the war. And we did a lot of combat assaults, a lot of resupply missions, and a lot of medical evacuation flights where we carried the severely wounded guys to the hospital right there in Chu Lai. And, I have no idea how many wounded guys I carried, but it was a bunch, We carried guys that got up, and they were blue from, loss of blood and oxygen. And, we just do the best we can just to get them to the hospital just as quickly as we could.
Absolutely.
And hopefully we saved a bunch of guys by doing that,
You're listening to Robert Nebel here on the Six Figure Trucker, brought to you by Norton Transport. Robert has taken us back to his time as a pilot in Vietnam, in a couple of different factions there, fighting the good fight and trying to save as many as possible from that war. Robert, what kind of memories did you take away from that? What kind of experiences has it helped you later in life, having been through that and seeing what you saw?
Well, what came out to me, after Vietnam, when I got home, I saw what was going on with all the protests and everything like that. And, I was not involved with that in any way, shape, or form. I was just doing my duty as a garrison officer in the Army. And what struck me was that, some guys, some of my fellow soldiers and pilots were really bothered emotionally and psychologically for what they endured and saw and experienced. And I was able to just put that in a box and really not dwell on it, because the reason why I feel is because I had a solid childhood. And I had a very supportive mother and father who supported me in what I was doing in the Army, and they appreciated what I was doing. And, as a direct result of my support that I got from my family and friends, I was able to persevere and without any real emotional trauma from it. And, to this day, I'm a solid guy. So there you go.
Well, that's fantastic. You're listening to Robert Nebel here on the Six Figure Trucker, brought to you by Norton Transport. We're up in the air right now, talking about Robert's life up in the air. Of course, he's down on the ground driving for us now. Has been a truck driver since 2010, so 13 years. If you heard the first part of our sit-down conversation with Robert Nebel last week, but we want to go back up into the sky because your time as a pilot didn't end after your time in Vietnam. Tell us what happened next.
Well, after Vietnam, I got out of the service and I just bounced around doing odd jobs. I worked in construction, building a power plant for Brown and Root, and did that. And I knew I wanted to fly. I knew I wanted to be an airline pilot. Again, I had no earthly idea how I was going to get there. So I decided, I want to join the Air Force. I want to go back in the military and be a pilot in the Air Force. Well, in order to do that, you have to have a college degree. So I went to night school, really applied myself, worked my butt off, and got transfer courses so I could go to Embry-Riddle and Daytona Beach. And transferred a bunch of credits in there and was able to graduate in time because they had an age limit at 26 and a half to get into pilot training in the Air Force. And I met that by about just a couple of months. And my eyes were not 20/20 anymore, so I ended up being a navigator in the Air Force. And my first assignment flying in the Air Force was an EF-4 fighter bomber. And I had a real problem with air sickness in that thing because I'd never really flown a high-performance jet fighter in my life. And boy, oh boy, you talk about barfing your guts out. Woo!
Yeah, you would be hard. Turning some G's in that, I guess.
Yeah, it took me a while to get over it, but I was finally able to acclimatize myself to that.
Quick question: back in that time frame, were they wearing the G-force suits then, or were you? No.
Yeah. In the F4, because the G limit on the F4 is 6.5 Gs, and the human body can basically handle without a G suit up to about 2 to 3 Gs without a problem. Mm-hmm. But once you start getting over 3, 4, 5, 6 Gs, then the G suit is engineered, designed to help you combat that so you don't lose what's called a G-induced loss of consciousness, or we call it a G-lock, G-L-O-C, G-induced loss of consciousness.
Now, a G-force, correct me if I'm mistaken, but it's a person's body weight in pressure applied toward them. So if you weighed 180 pounds, 1 G would be 180 pounds of pressure applied against you.
Right, and it's a multiple thereof.
Right.
So it goes up, so it's 2 times that, 3, 4, 5, 6. The most Gs I've ever pulled in the F4 was 8.
That's a lot of Gs in an F4.
Yeah, that hurt. I felt that. It was an instantaneous thing, but I broke a bunch of in my feet from that, and I had what they called Geezels.
Oh, my.
But it went away after.
I'm imagining that was not necessarily from speed, but it's the torque, the twist, the turns. Yeah, what made the G-force make it to 8 there?
Well, if you have a lot of airspeed, you have all that energy available, and the pilot pulls on the stick hard enough, he's able to, put those Gs on the airplane. And the purpose of having Gs on the airplane helps the airplane turn quicker. Mm-hmm. If you're heading north and you bank the airplane over and you pull a lot of Gs, you can go from north to east pretty quick.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what Gs do for the airplane. Any airplane, even a Boeing 737, if you turn the airplane, you're going to put G on the airplane. But in the civilian world, we're kind of limited to 30 degrees of bank. So, the Gs that you put on a Boeing 737 at a turn is like 1.01, 1.02. It's not that much. And the airplane's designed like that so as to not put any Gs on the passengers and they don't feel it.
Yeah, barely detectable there.
Correct. But it's there.
Oh, yeah. Now, take us back here. I didn't want to, we went down a different path there, but you're listening to Robert Nebel here on the Six Figure Trucker, brought to you by Norton Transport. Robert told us a lot last week about his time on the road as a driver. We're talking now about his time as a pilot. And I believe at this point you went back into the military and you were telling us take us back to where we left off there.
Well, I was in the F4 for 5 years. And I was in the back seat of the F4 as a navigator, and I got really tired of being a navigator because I wanted to be a pilot up front. And so I applied through the Air Force to the personnel to become a helicopter pilot again. And the next thing you know, they said, go be a helicopter pilot. So I went off and I flew H-3 helicopters at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, which was the greatest. And I did that for...
Living in Florida at the time's got to be pretty good.
Oh, yeah, it was great. The oysters were $1 a dozen, and the bucket of beers was $5. It was great. You should have been there. It was great. And, so I did that for a while, flying H-3 rescue helicopters. And I got tired of that because there was really no future, for advancement in rank and whatever. So I applied to, go to fixed-wing training. And I did that in Columbus, Mississippi in 1982. And I graduated number one in my class, won the Aircraft Commander's Trophy. I'm sorry, Air Training Command Trophy, Leadership Award, top pilot, blah, 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 all that. I won just about every award you can win. I'm a pretty good pilot, but nevertheless. And I got an assignment to C-141s out of Charleston, South Carolina.
Another good place.
And yeah, it was really nice. It's a big 4-engine T-tailed airplane. It's an international transport cargo airplane, and flew that all over the world, all over Europe, into Africa, up into Iceland, Canada, all over the US of A, down in the Caribbean, down in the Azores, and down in the South Atlantic. So I've been all over the place in that airplane. So it was a lot of fun. And then I retired from the Air Force after I went to training command, and I flew T-37s out at Reese Air Force Base in Lubbock, Texas, and retired from there in 1989. And then I got hired flying at Southwest Airlines, and I flew at Southwest Airlines in the Boeing 737 for 14 years. And that was really a lot of fun. That's about the most fun you can have with your clothes on, working. And
now, Mike has told me, your dispatcher, Mike has told me when you take loads with us, you usually have a hookup to get back to wherever you want to go. Tell us about that. How does that work out?
Well, being a retired guy, the way the rules and the regulations of Southwest work, in order to use unrestricted flight privileges after you retire, you have to work there a minimum of 10 years. And I was there for 14 years. So I have unrestricted privileges where I can fly for free anywhere in the Southwest system, provided there's a seat for me in the back. I can't ride in the cockpit anymore, but, I can stick my head up there, working on the ground, and say hello, which I try to do every time I get on a plane.
How often do you fly? I mean, I know you take some runs with us. How often, I guess, in the last year have you flown?
Probably 40 times.
Wow. You must love it. It's in your blood.
Yeah, and it's really great to, get on a Southwest jet, and because every once in a while I'm running into somebody that I've flown with, and it's really great visiting with them and having fun and, catch up with what's going on in their lives, their kids, and their wife and whatever. So it's always fun. I always enjoy it.
You do your catching up in the sky.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. It's fun.
So how beneficial, I mean, it's an obvious question here, is that for you working in Driveaway to be able to say, hey, I drive away and I fly away?
Yeah, it is a huge benefit that I'm able to use, and I use that to the maximum extent. Because, I live in the Atlanta area. So if I was delivering that truck for Republic out there on the north side of Seattle, I jump on a Southwest flight out of Seattle and come home on Southwest. And it doesn't cost me a penny. And it's a blessing beyond words, John. I mean, it's a blessing.
That's awesome that you've got that. And you earned it. I mean, the time you put in the military and the time you've done the commercial pilot, you certainly earned it.
Right.
Now, you've done more than just fly planes and fly helicopters. You have gotten into the teaching aspect of it. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So after I retired from Southwest, or let me back up a little bit. When I got my type rating in 1992, 93, I got my type rating, and I did so well in the training program there, they asked me to stay on as an instructor in the airplane. And the outfit was called Crew Pilot Training, and I said, sure, I'd love to. So they hired me as an instructor in the airplane, and next thing you know, I'm teaching guys and gals how to fly the Boeing 737.
How long does it take to take someone from the beginning to get to where they're actually capable of flying that aircraft? Well,
to take a person off the street that has zero flying experience, to get them up to being a airline trained, capable, and knowledgeable and good pilot is about a minimum of 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that goes into it, and flying an airplane is sure, you got to have the physical skills, and the hand-eye coordination. You got to have that, but beyond that, you got to be able to think and having the ability to think out of the box. Again, that gets back into my previous interview that we did, where we're talking about being able to think on your feet and be able to respond to situations as they present themselves. And that's part of being a good pilot.
Wanted to ask you about that question. You're listening to Robert Nebel here on the Six Figure Trucker, brought to you by Norton Transport. Thinking on your feet, thinking on the fly, no pun intended, but certainly something that you have been able to do in the air. How much has that helped you as a driver on the ground? The experiences, the critical situations you've been in, the crucial thinking, critical thinking that's needed in both. How much has that helped you up in the sky and down on the ground?
Well, I think it's directly transferable in that, like I previously alluded to, when I'm driving, especially a CNG truck, even when I was flying the Boeing 737, I'm constantly doing mathematics. Thinking about how far do I go? How much fuel do I have? How many pounds of fuel am I burning per hour? How far do we go? What's our ground speed? What are the winds doing? I'm thinking about that. And, when I'm driving a truck, I'm doing exactly the same thing. So it's directly transferable. And that's why, if you do that, if you're constantly thinking about your fuel, maybe the engine oil's the situation, the cooling, there's so many things that go into getting a truck down the road correctly and helping our customers get their desired product delivered to them in a timely manner. You have to think and, think quickly on your feet and be able to respond to the situations as they present themselves.
You're listening to Robert Nebel. He's a fascinating man, fascinating life, fascinating careers that he's had here on the Six Figure Trucker, brought to you by Norton Transport. I got a question for you, Robert.
Yes, sir.
Most lingering memory you have in the sky and on the ground? What's the thing that really, when somebody says, man, you must have seen so much, and there's no question that you have seen so much. Is there one thing that really sticks out? Let's talk about in the sky first. One thing that really comes to mind and you're like, you'll never forget.
Well, it's been my experiences at Southwest. Southwest has a secret sauce that they use to hire the right kind of people. The people they hire are like me. They're people. And they like working with the public. And I loved working at Southwest because of the people. The airplanes are nice, but they're mechanical things, and mechanical things don't love you back. But my coworkers, I miss them so much, and that's where my fondest memories from being in the sky is with my coworkers at Southwest.
Same question on the ground.
Well, I've had people kind of chuckle at this, I've been all over the world, been all over the Pacific, Asia, Africa, Europe, all over the Atlantic Ocean, yada, yada, yada. But the thing that really gets to me is when I'm driving for Norton and I'm driving all over this beautiful country of ours, I get to see the ground at ground level as opposed to 41,000 feet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're at 41,000 feet, you look out the window and you go, oh boy, look at that lake. Isn't that pretty? You know, but you know, you don't really get to see much detail. It's like this one trip I had to went out to San Diego, on the south side of San Diego. And I ended up driving on Interstate 8 in California. It parallels the border between U.S. and Mexico.
Mm-hmm. And
that road, to me, was just absolutely breathtaking, stunning, unbelievable. And I so thoroughly enjoyed that. And I felt so blessed, you know, to even just be a part of the organization that allows me to experience that. You know, it was wonderful, you know, and I'm eternally thankful for that.
It's like one of those moments where you pinch yourself and you're like, I'm getting paid to do this?
Yeah. Going through New Mexico, you know, eastern New Mexico is just stunning. Around, what's that place in, was it Arizona or New Mexico? Sedona.
Sedona's Arizona, yeah.
Yeah, I've been through there a couple of times, and it's breathtaking. I mean, it's just so pretty.
You know,
I mean, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but the thing about New Mexico, I mean, I wanted to run this by you. You've been out there. The sky is a different color blue. You know, they call it the land of enchantment. It's a different color blue.
Yes, it truly is. And when I was in the Air Force, we'd go up to Sholo, Arizona, and we'd be at the hotel, and I'd go out at night just to look at the stars. You know, it was like Close Encounters of the Third Kind of night.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's just absolutely breathtaking. You know, the clarity of the skies and what you can see at night is just, it makes you feel really humble. You know, it really makes you feel really small when you look out there and you see what you see. It's just truly extraordinary. It's a blessing.
And you've seen a lot of things that people have not seen, not just things and breathtaking things, but you talk about the space and the size of the world. Oh, yeah. I mean, and you've seen it from the sky. You've been up there, like you said, 41,000 feet above the ground there. And I wanted to ask you this question as we wrap up, and you're listening to Robert Nebel here on the Six Figure Trucker, brought to you by Norton Transport. And we had Robert on 2 sessions simply because it's an amazing life he's led, a lot of great experiences, a lot of stories to tell. All those things brought together, what would you say to someone as far as what Driveaway trucking might offer them? What would give us, be candid?
You know, first of all, I would implore you to get your CDL, although that's not required to drive for Norton. You know, you can get non-CDL loads, but that does open a lot more doors for you to do that. You know, the more qualifications you have, the better off you are. And I would say, don't be afraid to go forward, you know, and to apply yourself. You know, I cannot tell you the number of times that I'd be standing in the jetway in uniform, of course, you know, at Southwest, and a person would come up to me and they'd look at me and they go, oh man, I wanted to be a pilot so bad. I have heard that 100 times if I heard it once.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and I just say to myself silently, well, why don't you go do something about it? Because it's your dream, and go live your dream no matter what it is. If you want to be a doctor, go become a doctor. You know, apply yourself. You can't do something unless you try, and you got to try, and you got to show up to do it. That's the name of the game.
There you have it from Robert Nebel here on the Six Figure Trucker, brought to you by Norton Transport. And what he just said certainly applies to anyone who wants to get behind the wheel. Come join forces with us here at Norton Transport in the Driveaway trucking space. It's something that we think a lot of people would enjoy, and Robert can certainly speak to that.
Yes, sir.
Robert, thank you so much. We really appreciate you being on the show with us here on the Six Figure Trucker. Robert Nebel, 76 years young, still keeping on trucking.
Six Figure Trucker is brought to you by Norton Transport. Norton Transport is a drive-away trucking company that customers can rely on. It offers excellent independent contract driving opportunities to professional, courteous, and qualified drivers that can provide the kind of service we deliver. If you're interested in learning more about Norton or just want to subscribe to the show, check out 6-figuretrucker.com. That's 6-figuretrucker.com.